Okay, it's June 13th, 2014, and this is a review of the Treasuries. I'm doing something a little bit different today. I'm going to go through and maybe spend a little bit more time on some different setups. This is for learning for me, so keep that in mind if I end up posting this to my YouTube channel. And also, I do have this screen grab right over here, end of day reconstructed tape built on 500 or above contracts. I've just been kind of monitoring this. I want to see when the big guys hit in. And if I start to see big guys hit in a certain area, I want to see what's happening from a reaction perspective. So just some interesting things there. The day didn't really start till after 8:30. There was some pre-market bouncing. There was news right at 8:30. So I'm just going to play this. You can see here 8:29, 30 seconds. We're trading right down here at the lows. Just notice the lack of liquidity. All of this stuff just looks funky. So you just don't want to be trading about at this time. So news comes out, pops up immediately, and it's just going to play around up here. It's going to go up. It's going to come down. I don't remember what the news was or what the results were, but again, just a reminder, you need to be very careful when you see liquidity drop. That's just a sign that something is going to happen, some sort of news event or something of that nature. So I think the first real setup occurred as a before she goes type trade right after the news event. You can see the volume is kind of firmed up again, so it's safe to trade. The bulls kind of pushed it up here to this profile step, and the bears just brought it right back down. You can kind of argue and say, well, maybe we're in a range, or maybe that was just a head fake and now it's going to go back up. But really when you want to look for signs and then hit in. And the reason I wanted to show this is because I have trouble with these types of trades, and there's just a few interesting clues that happen that kind of clued me in afterwards as to why I might want to take this as a short setup. So I'm just kind of watching the price action here, and you can kind of see the price hidden right here at 1100. So the bulls were active, and it looks like they're absorbing right here. Okay, and notice the bulls pushed it up. It came down. The bulls pushed it up a tick. It had hit in at like 800 and then kind of dropped to 540 right here. Notice over here in the 5-year, you've got the same thing, 219. Notice here though in the ZB, you've got this 188, but it looks like it's an iceberg. I think I missed this one, but you saw it again. It came back down and then came up, but only had 100 contracts on it. And again, so one of the things you want to see here in an area like this, I think, on a bounce, is you want to see the bulls as they push something up, that they push it up with strength. So pushing up with only like 100 contracts just kind of indicates that there's not really necessarily strength there. Now, they could be luring you in which case you'd be stuck here at the bottom. But given the context where you're kind of trading down here at the bottom, you have this step in the profile, weak bulls. Look, they haven't really hit in right up here. You haven't really seen any bull active strength yet. And every time they do, tick up, they're ticking up on small volume. Okay, there we go. Now they pushed it up 1,500 contracts here, but again, they only pushed up with 300, 400, 500, and it didn't take much to pull that back down. Again, hit it up, 400, dropping to 200, and brings it right back down. Now here, you see that they've only brought it down with 100, but they hit that right back down here, 640 contracts. And I think at this point it kind of goes. So I think this is more about context than it is necessarily about the order flow. If I want to see a bounce here, I want to see a bounce where the bulls are pushing this up with strength. And every time the bulls would push it up, they were pushing it up with very little strength and very little volume that they were hitting into. And you can see here it just drops from here. So if you weren't in here at 05 or 4.5, you're kind of out of luck with this particular trade. Okay, so this next setup is a pullback setup, and it was really hard to read here on ZN, a little bit more clear over here on ZB. Now, the rules for a pullback setup for me is one is a strong breakout, pulls back on light volume, it goes to a very clear area where you want to see, where you've had prior support or resistance or something along those lines, and you want to see the book lighten up as it taps into that kind of key support or key area that you've identified. In the case of ZN, we came down here, formed a new low. Most everything was met from a requirements. And when it was pulling back, what you'll see here is it's pulling back on pretty good book when it gets up here to the area where it's going to turn. And that was very disconcerting, made it a little difficult. Now, if you look over here, though, in the ZB, and I'm going to see if I can time these up a little bit. Not sure I can. The ZB is much more clear. So you'll see the ZB when it pushes up, it's going to push up with just hardly any volume at all. Notice the volume over here in the book in ZN, and then over here in ZB. Notice this volume drop off right here in ZB. It goes down to 258 contracts. This dropped off a little bit, but still not terrible. And notice also you just kind of had this drying up of bull buying. So you had 78 contracts hit in here at 3.5, and over here in ZB they didn't touch 135.14. And I think that was it. I think it went up with a weak book. The bears, here you go, 8,700. That's nothing. So the bulls are pretty much done here at this point, at least on ZB. You can tell. And here in a minute it'll drop down here. But I think ZB was much more clear than ZN, where ZN was pushing up, but it was pushing up with some pretty decent volume. It really didn't drop off as much as ZB, and so that was a little bit difficult to read. Okay, so price had then, after that first pullback, came back down here to 30.5, which was only one tick below the low, which had been at 31. And it was coming back up, and again, you're looking for a pullback area. It came back, though, and just notice it came back on strong volume, right? That's pretty good volume as it was coming back. This, again, was very difficult, but you're kind of looking here at this 1.5. You've got this step in the profile here at 1.5, 124, 1.5. And you're just looking to see, is there an opportunity to get in here? Do these firm up at all? So you pump up here, 700 or 800 contracts push up. You can tell the bulls are a little bit tentative. Same kind of stuff over here. You got pretty good size pumping up here in ZB, except right there goes to 400. Here it kind of trails off 200 or 300, but it's absorbing. So this is actually an iceberg right here, a bid iceberg right here at 1.5. Low volume here, high volume here. It just made this for a tricky pullback is my point. This was very difficult to read because you're looking at what could be bear weakness and bull strength, but what ends up happening is it kind of pulls back several ticks here, and that's kind of done. So what ends up happening next, and now as you kind of pull context together, what happened next, if I remember correctly, and I could be wrong, but it came back down, but eventually it turned right back up. So, the fact that this moved up with strong volume, and then it just kind of, even though the bulls looked stronger, it still kind of gave way some ticks, but then it kind of reversed after that. Just, the context kind of comes together that really the bulls seemed to be in control here, not the bears. So interesting setup, an interesting way to kind of pick your spots. If you picked your spot right here at 1.5, and you just kind of sat through it, trusting that it would hold, then you would have been okay. But you didn't have any other support anywhere else. So nothing over here on ZB tells you that 09 is going to hold. ZN, you do have this step in the profile here at 24.5, but that's pretty much all you got. Okay, so again, just to illustrate, with pullbacks, you really kind of have to focus and pay attention to who's in control. And that last trade would have worked out for a couple ticks, but it only went a couple ticks and then it came right back up. So this 1.5 area had held, but it held kind of temporarily, not very much, and then it's all the way back here again. It only went down a couple ticks and then came right back. And I wanted to show this order flow because when you're thinking about a place to take a stand, and as an example, right here, 1.5. Let's say you think, wow, that's a really big step in the profile. Again, look at your context, look at the pullback volume, and then look at who's giving up. And so far, your context is that you only had a one tick. The second move down was only a one tick failure here. You don't have agreement in ZB that's a place to stop, or ZN. You had strong volume on this pullback, and now as it pushes up again, you've got pretty decent volume on the bull side pushing up. So even though from a profile step perspective this looks like it's a good opportunity, it really isn't, because you've got context and order flow that's telling you different. And the other thing to note, so look at, if you notice the time here, 9:33:08. At 9:33:23, we're going to have someone pop in here and buy 500 contracts. And notice they just bought 500 contracts 9:32:54. They just bought 500 at 01.5. So just part of this 1953 was someone that bought right here 500 contracts. So that's a big guy that comes in, boom, snatches up 500 contracts right here. So there's interest in buying right here from one of the big guys. Okay, that's an important point. So they do it again, they buy up. Okay, so if you made your stand here at 1.5, okay, and you see this action where it's pushing up, and look how strong it's pushing up, all across the board. That's not pushing up on weak volume. That's pushing up on a strong book, a strong bid, and they're actively hitting in as well. So this is a good example of where it's important to pick your spot, but recognize that you have to have other confirming factors to make sure you got the right spot. Okay, so in this example, this is only a couple minutes after that prior move up, and in this example, you have a situation where you've had this move that came up, didn't have a lot of resistance until you got here to 124.03. You can see a lot of selling happen right here. So to some degree, that could be a little bit of a clue. From a context perspective, you're back to this kind of support, low one, where it can come down here earlier in the day and reverse. So this became support. Now it's resistance. You are also in ZB right up here at the top of this profile step, and again came up on these last few moves were very little volume, and you see the bears start to hit in. And same thing here, you've kind of hit this profile wall right here in ZF. Okay, so the context for this is you've kind of entered no man's land here. This is kind of a valley, and you can probably expect price maybe to get through that valley, but not all in one shot. If it comes all the way from the bottom, it's come all the way back up. It's probably not going to keep coming all the way up here to 7.5. And your presumption is it's reasonable here at 124.04, where support became resistance. You've got strengthening of the book here, that this might be a good spot to maybe hit in. Now, what's interesting, 10:38:34, you have someone that just hit in here at 9:38:04 at 3.5. So someone just hit in 500 contracts here at 3.5, who's looking to buy and push this through. But again, check out what happens here across the board. Pretty decent volume, hitting back in here. Okay, they push it up. Strong volume. They push it up over here. Really big volume right here, but looks like an iceberg over here in ZF. That was one attempt. Look at this, 3,400 contracts right here. They're really attempted to trying to push this up right here. Now they backtick here, and they backtick here with 2,200. Second attempt to push it up. This time it only started with 700 contracts. There goes third attempt to push it up. It went down to 300. You just kind of get the feeling they try and try and try and try, and they're not getting anywhere. They're not, the bulls have stopped hitting in here. That was, they're pushing up with weakness now. I think that, you think they kind of know that game's over. And right here, someone 100, 300, boom, this is a good time to get in right here. They're hitting into 600 contracts. That's it. They're not even touching 124.05 any longer. And here we go. We're back ticking again. Okay, so again, and hopefully you're paying attention over here to on the ZB and what the ZF were doing. But again, another example where you pick your spot and it might run past your spot a little bit. I thought maybe an 04 would hold, and it didn't, but you could tell that it wasn't going to hold. And then you saw this boom, 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 these multiple attempts to go up, and they just kept failing, and they got weaker and weaker and weaker, and then they stopped hitting in, and that's a good opportunity to fade this right here at this area. Okay. In this next segment, I'm just going to show what happened between, basically 9:45 and, for an hour. Prices basically, goes up and down and bounces up above, bounces below. It's just kind of moving around, but, you're kind of in this range. I mean, there's no area where you look at it and you think, okay, that's a great spot to get in. So you're just kind of stuck. You can almost argue that 4.5 was a pretty decent spot to get in here. That it would hold, and then things would move up once it got above that 4.5. But again, you're just, there's points here that you're not quite sure where it's going to stop, and that's where the trading becomes really tricky. You would have expected it to stop here at 7.5, but it didn't. It went up. You've got these guys coming in, hitting in at 07, 08, 500, 1,000 contracts at 08. Just a few minutes ago, they're trying to push this up, but it doesn't go, and it actually comes back. Now, at some point, they're going to either defend or puke out, but here's an area. We got back to an area where I'm interested. I'm interested in this 4.5, and I'm interested to see this 4.5 hold. So, first thing, couple things I notice is I noticed that the weak bears, pushing down with only 596 contracts here. That's encouraging. You can tell I kind of had my spot here, but I'm hesitant to just let it sit right there, especially when they bump this up to over 1,000 and they hit in over 1,000 right here. I'm just thinking, yeah, maybe it's not the right time yet. Let me just look and see. You can see I'm kind of going back and forth as to having it here or not. I like seeing the bulls hit back in here. I like seeing this strength right here. But I also have some bear strength over here. It came down here to 17, 135.17. I have some good strength here holding. Over here, I've got some weakness here on ZB that actually gives up. So that made me a little bit nervous. I want to see ZB strengthen up a little bit or hold an iceberg, which didn't happen. And what's happening again, you have an iceberg here, a small iceberg here on 135.17. So, it ticks down here, and this is a good example where I picked my spot, but the order flow didn't really show that it wanted to hold right there. There was some good strength still coming down here on the bear side, and over here on the ZB, it just didn't. It was giving up too much. You can see the weakness. It's just giving this run up. So a really good example here. And I even want to backtrack here, so I actually went backwards a couple minutes again, just to reemphasize this, that as this stuff comes down, notice it's not lightening up. Lighting up. It's still coming down pretty heavy with strength in the book. There's nothing that's really deteriorating here on the offer. And then the bulls are giving up. They're showing a large number, but then they're kind of pulling it as soon as the price comes down. So again, another excellent example here of reading the order flow. Even though you've picked your spot, it looks like a clear spot. It's not necessarily the best spot, and you want to look for the best spot. So as price kind of blew through your 4.5 area that you thought was going to hold, and one of the things I'm noticing with the treasuries And of course, it's not a hard and fast rule, but price will kind of blow past a certain key point that you think is going to hold. And whether it's just trapping people out or trapping people in, I don't really know. I just know that I've seen that happen. And when it comes down to here, the one of the things I notice is, this is not giving way anymore. So whereas before it would give way to 1,000, come down, drop to 1,000 contracts on the bid, this is not giving way. This is not giving way. Everything's strengthened here on the bid, and they were hitting back here at 0.4. They're hitting back here at a 3.5. Yeah, they bumped this up, right here at 3.5. But that's an impossible trade to take because it's in the middle of nowhere, in the middle of a range. It just overshot this 4.5 area, and now it's coming back through. So there's no way that I can see of how you trade that. Sure, things strengthen, but you don't know that it's not just going to keep going all the way down here to the bottom of this range. So willing to give that one up, but certainly it was following the price action up here at 4.5, seeing how strong the bears were pushing it down, knowing not to get in, that saved you. Okay, so this is one where I actually did want to trade this one because I did recognize, at least what went through my head is that, okay, they overshot this. They probably trapped out a whole bunch of people down here below at this 0.4, 3.5, 3 area, and now they're kind of making their way back up. And I saw this, at 11.20, 630 contracts hit in here at 0.4.5. I thought, okay, that 0.4.5 is going to hold, right? It's coming right back up through here. And so you'll see me, I try to get in here. Doesn't look like there's much going on right here. But again, context, we came all the way down, we've moved it back up, I've cleared out my trades. And just looking for any strength or weakness on one side or the other. But I'm thinking if I can get in here at 4.5, that's fantastic. I might have to get in here at 5. My risk would be to 3.5. If it comes back down here 3.5, it may only go to 3 in turn, but it's probably going further at that point. So again, you see an iceberg here, drops down here 11.89. That's all they got. They got 4. 500 hit back in here. 676. So the bulls are active, and they're actively hitting back in. They're luring in the bears, so they tried to lure them in with just a small order on the bid. The bears didn't really take that one. They bring it down again, but again, notice they bring it down. See if we can get this the right spot. They bring it down with 620 and then 881 on the offer. Kind of weak on the offer. And again, they only print a little bit in there at 4.5. And that's when I thought, yeah, I should probably get in here. You can see me hovering right over here. And I decide, oh, maybe I'll get this extra tick. And then boom, I saw this pop up. And I'm still hoping at this point. Just the lack of selling interest, it was gone. And of course I didn't get taken in. Price starts to pop up and off it goes. So missed that trade. Really, that when you see the lack of interest here, and the buyers are active and they're there, you just got to hit in. That's part of my problem. Okay, so this next trade is a good reason why you want to mark your platform. Earlier, it had come all the way up here at 8.5 and reversed. This 217 and 857 is part of this earlier move, and I put an R here for a resistance. And we're looking at the price now. It's starting to come up, and it's coming up a little bit on weak volume actually, which is interesting. At least a weak book. Yeah, you can kind of notice here. 5, 6, 7, 800 contracts are moving this up. Attempts to get up here at 8 even, smack back. So just, again, watch this over here on the ZB. So firms up. They're hitting right here at 108. Now, they pop it up, but they pop it up on 417 contracts. Now they're kind of showing, hey, we've got more, but they're not really hitting into here at 09. They're lightening up over here at 25. 26 is a clear area too. And look at this. Notice, the bears are hitting right back in here. Now it's being absorbed by those bulls. You saw that pop right back up, and immediately 183 contracts brought this down. Now they pop it up, but they bring it up only on 260. Probably a great time to get in right here. To sell at 8.5. Again, only 150 contracts, now 200. So each time they pop that up, they're coming up with less and less and fewer contracts supporting the bid. And eventually, probably right about now, you see me just, my hand's right here just thinking, okay, when's a good time? When's a good time? Well, that was it. that was the good time. And of course we're gonna come up here probably one more time, and then we're gonna take off, coming down. And it came down a few ticks, which is a pretty decent trade. So longer video today because I wanted to dive a little bit more into some details and some good examples of pullbacks. When's a good time to get into a pullback or a fade trade? When's a good time to say I'm going to hold off because it's not quite looking right?